Hello, everybody. My name is Preston. I'm going to be trying to do a Bible study over the book of Matthew over the next 30 days or so. So in Matthew chapter 1, as I'm reading this, I'm seeing there's a lot on the genealogy of Christ. And I think for a lot of us reading this, it's easy to kind of glance over and not see the meaning in it. But from what I see, there's a couple things that stand out to me. One of them was that part of the genealogy of Christ was David, which was a fulfillment of the prophecy in Jeremiah 23:5, as well as others. And then also, more importantly, I see down here, one example is sort of the mess of the people's lives in the history or the ancestry of Jesus, the man, and then how that has just nothing on how perfect Jesus ends up living his life. And so one example is Rahab. So in verse 5 of Matthew 1, it talks about part of Jesus' genealogy being Rahab, which, if you didn't know, was a harlot or a prostitute. And so, interestingly enough, she's actually not just Rahab the harlot, known as that in the Bible, but she also was one of the few, if not the only example, where lying was considered righteous. Why? Because of the specific scenario that she was in. She was like lying for the sake of God's people. And if she hadn't have lied, they would have likely been killed. And so God counted her sin and a lie for righteousness because of the motive behind her heart. And that's why I think that's really telling as to how we interpret what in our lives is sin or not is heavily based on the motive behind what we're doing and not simply what we're doing. Then further down, we also see that David was the father of Solomon by the wife of Uriah in verse 6. And if you don't know the story of Uriah and David, you should definitely check that out. And let me know if you want me to do a recounting of it. But essentially, David commits adultery with Uriah, one of his highest commander's wives, while Uriah is out at war and just fighting David's war, and he's over here sleeping with his wife. And not just that, David attempts to blame the pregnancy that ends up happening from that adultery on Uriah when he makes Uriah come visit him and attempts to tempt him to go take comfort in his wife and sleep with his wife so that he can blame that on him. But instead, Uriah, being the noble, courageous, strong man that he is, he refuses to go take comfort in his wife. Why? Because all of his men that are under him, since he's a commander, are out there fighting and dying in the war. And far be it for me, I believe is how he puts it, to take comfort in that while my men are all dying and fighting. What a wonderful eye into the character of Uriah. And here David is cheating on him. But not just that. So David, when he finds out that he can't blame this pregnancy on Uriah and slip it under the rug a lot of it there, he sends Uriah into a position in the battle where Uriah will almost surely die. If I remember right, it was right up against the castle walls that they're invading, where you can just have boulders hurled at you, spears, arrows, oil and fire. God knows what you could be thrown at you. But he's in that, arguably one of the most vulnerable positions inside that type of warfare. And so he dies. And when he dies, David thinks he's scot-free. He's clear. Well, God doesn't end up letting him keep his son that he got from that adultery. After the fact, he marries Bathsheba, which is the wife of Uriah, after Uriah has died, and after the son that was in Bathsheba passes away, he ends up having another son with Bathsheba, at least one other son, and one of those sons is Solomon. So, by the way, that's King Solomon, the most wise man that ever walked the earth aside from Jesus, the most wise king that ever walked the earth aside from Jesus, that there was nobody before him or after him like him, that he impressed so many other nations. That's Solomon. So we're kind of hinting at what my point is of this chapter, but as we keep going, we see other prophecies being fulfilled. One of the prophecies, like I said earlier, I believe was Jesus being part of the genealogy of David. And there was also the prophecy mentioned in verse 23 of Matthew 1, behold, the virgin shall conceive and bear a son, and they shall call his name Emmanuel, which means God with us. And so Jesus, being the son of a virgin, Mary, ended up fulfilling that prophecy. But moving back to the main 2 points that I have for this, one being the fulfillment of prophecy, which increases my faith and should increase your faith, but also the complete lack of respect or reverence at all of God and his perfection and his plan for their lives, for your life, for my life, and for how messed up we can make our lives. David, I just told you what David did, and God brought out of that not only the genealogy that he did and all the sons that he did, first off being Solomon, the King Solomon, the wise King Solomon, but not just that, all the way down to God's own son, Jesus Christ, the Messiah, walking on the earth out of the seed of David, or out of the lineage of David. How crazy is that? God can sit there and take your mess and my mess in our lives and make it into something that is not just beautiful, but perfect. And that's one of the beautiful things about serving God, is that our righteousness, our perfection is definitely not dependent on how perfect we are, because we can't be perfect on our own strength, on our own ability. It's the sacrifice of Christ and his perfection on us, his blood covering us, that allows us to reach that perfection. So if you're in the midst right now of being severely depressed or downtrodden, anxious, worried about how messed up your life is, whether you did that or whether other people did that to you, or whether it's a mixture, probably a mixture, guess what? God's not going to let that stop him from perfecting you. God's not going to let that stop him from changing your life around. And so I just want to encourage you and me and all of us to seek God first, and to put him first, and to look forward to the wonderful beauty and perfection that he can create from our imperfect, to put it gently and to put it very kindly, our imperfect lives. Thank you for watching.